Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode by Building Better Brains. So, frequently, when I meet with parents for a screening of their child's cognitive and reading abilities, they tell me that their child has poor working memory or poor memory. They tell me that it affects their child's learning ability as well as their home life, just being able to remember a series of instructions that perhaps mom has given them a list of chores. This can be a real challenge for these kids to retain. So when I explained working memory to a 10-year-old not long ago, and he said, I get it, it's called working memory because it's the memory you need to use in order to do your work. And then he went on to say that now he understands why he wasn't very good at doing his work in class. Honestly, I have to say that I could not have put it better myself. So first of all, what is working memory, or what is commonly called short-term memory? So let's talk first about what that will look like in your child if they have a weak working memory. So if it is weak, your child could appear careless, unfocused, lazy, possibly even defiant. And as frustrating as this can be for you as a parent, it is even more so for kids who are trying their hardest but appear like they are making no effort at all. So despite your child's efforts, they can't seem to do anything right. And obviously that's super discouraging for them. So a weak working memory influences countless areas related to learning and can even lead to a diagnosis of learning disabilities. So in fact, studies have shown that around 70% of students with learning disabilities in reading score on the very low spectrum of working memory. And working memory is an executive function, which I did describe previously in a previous blog, or vlog, I should say, as the brain's CEO. And so if you want to learn more about that, hop onto my YouTube channel. So it is used constantly throughout the day to solve problems, perform tasks, hold conversations, comprehend, and learn new concepts. Adults, kids, we use it constantly. So difficulty remembering a series of instructions, recalling the sequence of events in items, poor concentration are all possible indications of a weak working memory. So think of your working memory like the trunk of your car. It's temporary storage until you arrive home and decide where to put your parcels. Now imagine that you have the tiniest little car and the tiniest amount of trunk space, but there are now 6 people in your family. So clearly there is not nearly enough space for everyone. Some items, when you go shopping, grocery shopping, whatever the case may be, are just going to have to be left behind. And this is what happens to your child when they have a weak working memory. Their trunk space is super small. Working memory is where information is stored temporarily while your child completes other cognitive tasks. So it allows your child to remember the correct sequence of steps to solve a math equation as they also try to calculate the answer. And if working memory is weak, they may forget the sentence they thought up for a story in language class because now they have to think about which word of the week to use in their sentence. So this forgetting and then having to go back and trying to remember and going back and then forgetting is a constant battle for your child if they have a weak working memory. So it's really and honestly no wonder so many of them hate school, are totally discouraged, and you have to fight with them to get on the bus in the morning. Eventually, some of these kids just give up trying altogether. So to be honest, simply thinking about their overwhelm makes me tired and discouraged. So these kids may appear weak in math. I wanted to note that. It's very common for them to be diagnosed with a math disorder, not because they have poor calculation skills, but because they have difficulty remembering the correct sequence of steps or the correct sequence to solve the equation, as they must also store that information temporarily in order to calculate the answer. So it's not really their computation or numeracy skills that's the problem sometimes, as it is their working memory. Being labeled as absent-minded or disorganized, lazy, all too common. Many of the daily tasks that require your working memory do not need to be stored into your long-term memory. So for example, you don't need to remember a grocery list a year later. So working memory is used to remember stuff like a phone number while you look for a pen, to remember a brief shopping list that your partner calls out as you leave the house, or to remember directions that you asked a clerk at a gas station for while you're lost in a foreign town. It is your working memory that allows you to remember those directions that you got from the gas station clerk while you drive your car around and navigate the city and all these new roads, and possibly even have brief conversations with other passengers in your car. And at school, your child may sit at his or her desk not knowing the work the teacher just assigned because he can't remember the series of steps or only can remember a few. And so maybe his work looks like it's incomplete, or he's just not trying, or he's trying to just get it done half-assed. So you likely see the same at home. When you ask your child to complete a series of chores before his friend comes over for a sleepover perhaps, and either one or none is done, and you might think he's being defiant or lazy, never suspecting that a weak working memory is actually the issue. So in daily life, these kids may have been asked to eat, wash their face, and then brush their teeth. And instead they do the reverse. And really, you don't really want to be brushing your teeth and then eating, right? So simple tasks like setting the table or retelling an event, so sequencing. So an event that might have happened at school, to retell that becomes a real challenge because it requires an exceedingly long time for them to do this. Their speech might be slower so they can process their words. Their sentences might be jumbled. Stuff just doesn't make sense. They might lose their train of thought, or their story you find out from the other kids in the family, or you call the teacher and it's like, oh, I see. So when a child is walking a tightrope between remembering what to do next while trying to focus on what they are doing now, low self-esteem and lack of motivation is more than likely going to occur. And school and daily life can feel like a constant uphill battle. And it's important to know first that working memory is limited both in the amount of information it can store as well as for how long it can store that information. So a person with a good working memory can store approximately 6 to 7 items for 30 seconds without rehearsal before breakdown starts to occur. Information can be lost through distraction, information overload, stress, or the passage of time. And any of us who's been pregnant or through a lot of stress or just tired has definitely experienced this. And this temporary storage can last 15 minutes to 24 hours, depending on how meaningful that information is to the brain, to yourself. The number of items that can be stored is significantly less for the child with a weak working memory, and it's significantly less in terms of the time, so minutes to hours. So factor in fatigue or stress, your kid just generally hating school, and learning becomes a very hard task. So parents tell me that they can't give any more than 2 instructions at a time. Often that's something they say when they come into my office. And while this is an exceedingly, this is an excellent strategy to just name off 2 at a time, living with a weak working memory is no way to live at all. It's like insisting that your family of 6 learns to live with that tiny little car with a tiny little trunk storage. And so forth. Upgrading to a bigger car when the time is right can make life a whole lot less stressful and enjoyable. So in my next vlog, I will explain how you can improve your child's working memory. If you want to learn more about how you can help your child succeed, feel free to contact me. I'm doing free 20-minute STAR student consults, and you can learn more about what you can do to help your child succeed. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time.